Okay, thumbs up, everybody. Got the official nod from the back. Thanks for being here on a Wednesday night, on a rainy Wednesday night. Oh boy, on a rainy Wednesday night right before school starts next week. So many things going on, so much to do. Glad that you're here. If you're joining us online, glad that you're here as well. We're picking up our study of David, the one and only, the only person in Scripture with the name of David. I got a warm-up question for you, and there's a reason for the warm-up question. What are some smells that take you to another place and time? I'm thinking good smells, like good thoughts, good memories, like, oh man, I love that. But what are some things that when you smell it, you think of? It might be something in your childhood, it might be something from another job that you had. What are some smells? Linda?
I'm going to say a goat smell, how they make a mess. And it's
A what?
goat, when they do their business. I went to Chino, California, visiting my friend. Soon as you get there, that's all you smell.
Okay.
It's terrible. I said, how y'all live here like that? They were like, we just get used to it.
Now see, I grew up with horses and cows, and I love that smell. It brings me back. Jim?
Wet lumber.
Wet lumber.
Always reminds me of working in the summer of 81 and 82 with my brother out at Lettuce Lake Park building the boardwalk and the observation tower. Because it rains a lot in the summertime, and we were working with a lot of wood.
Yeah. Didn't know you got to do that. Yeah. Ron?
When I go to the tire shop and I smell all the tires, I'm reminded of when I worked at the Sears Automotive Center for about 5 minutes back when I was a kid and realized that was not a job for me.
So it doesn't take you back to a wonderful place and time. Yeah. LaMonica?
Apples. Apples takes me back to my childhood in New York. We always kept the apples on the porch. So we will always have, every time I smell apples, I remember that.
And when you smell them, you think of
my childhood.
Your childhood. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very good. Over here to Karen. And Fadia.
Suntan lotion.
Okay.
I grew up on the beach and had lots of fun and sailing, and it was great.
Smells like summer, right? Yep. Fun summers. Fadia.
Mine is cinnamon, because my mom baked a lot, and we could always walk into the house and smell cinnamon. So that brings back good memories.
Yeah, I like cinnamon too. There are smells that just transport us back to a place. There are sights. There are, there's all kind of things that remind us. Mine's potatoes. I grew up on a potato farm. And that wasn't our barn, but I just found that picture, but we had 4 barns about that size. We grew hundreds of acres of potatoes, and we would grade them and put them in a barn and sell them during the winter then when the price went up. And you could not open that barn without being overcome with the smell of potatoes, and to this day, I love that smell. It takes me back to my childhood. The rotten ones didn't smell good. But we worked pretty hard not to have rotten ones. But, cut hay, orange blossoms. Martha and I used to have orange groves around us. Great smells that take us places. David is going to experience at just the right time reminder of God's deliverance, but he's going to miss it. David is going to be taken back in time. He's going to be reminded of something that should change his reaction, but he misses it. By the way, I asked Martha this, and she didn't know. Dave's not here tonight. I think Dave would know this. Does anybody here remember the old church song, "Remind Me, Dear Lord"? Yes, she did. Yeah, I'm not going to sing a little bit of it. Do you remember that song? Do you remember Casman, do you remember how the chorus went? Roll back the... Dear Lord. Roll back the curtain of memory now and then. Show me where you brought me from and where I might have been. Just remember I'm a human and humans forget. So remind me, dear Lord. You guys went to church growing up, didn't you? I mean, you sang songs, didn't you? But I grew up singing that song about remind me of the things that I need to know. David is going to be reminded of something that he should have remembered, and it should change what he does. Spoiler alert, he doesn't, and it won't. So shall we pick up where we left off? Yes, we shall. Saul has kind of crossed the line here. He wants David dead. Tried to do it twice himself in his home, throws a spear at David several times. Saul is very upset with his daughter Michal, who loves David enough, her husband, to help him escape. Saul is very upset with his son Jonathan, who loves David enough to want him to survive. In fact, he tries to kill Jonathan as well. Saul does. Jonathan confirms that Dad has lost it. Dad is never going to be reconciled back with David. Jonathan and David have this tearful goodbye. They cry, but David cries the most, if you remember. So David begins life on the run. As a young man, probably in his early 20s, in one fell swoop, he has lost his wife, he's lost his mentor, he's lost his best friend, and he's not in a good place. In fact, he finds himself angry, isolated, and alone. This young guy who was minding his own business, watching sheep, and then he gets caught up in this whirlwind of activity. Now he's at a place where he's no doubt angry with the way his story's playing out. He is afraid for his life. He's actually literally running for his life. He is alone. He's completely alone. He's been abandoned by the guy that he has trusted and risked his life for. He has been rejected by the people that he's risked his life for. And he's done, to this point, he's going to do some things wrong, but to this point, he does nothing wrong. David has done absolutely nothing wrong. He is no doubt angry, isolated, and afraid. And David does what so many of us do when we get angry, isolated, and afraid. He panics. The man after God's own heart is going to panic. He decides to take matters into his own hands. He kind of loses sight of what it is that's always centered him. He kind of loses sight of what God has done for him. And it's really hard for us to even imagine David, this man after God's own heart, has lost sight of God being with him. David panics. 3,000 years removed, we look back at that story and we say, man, how could David, of all people, how could King David lose sight of God's presence? David, why would you panic? Why would you run? Why would you abandon who you know to be right? And the answer is, when we are angry, isolated, and confused, our natural inclination is to panic. Let's just be honest with each other. I'm sure you can think back of some chapters in your life with the benefit of time and distance and context. You can look back at an instant in your life and you think to yourself, why did I do that? Why did I go there? Why did I return that call? Why did I spend that money? Why did I take that job? Why did I kind of get together with this group over here? I should have known better. And so often the answer is, when we feel angry, isolated, or confused, we have a tendency to panic. That's exactly what David did. The text tells us this. Let's jump into the text. We're in 1 Samuel 21. David went to the city of Nob to see Ahimelech the priest. Okay, David goes to Nob, where Ahimelech the priest is, where the tabernacle is right now. Remember what's inside the tabernacle? Big thing, box, Ark of the Covenant, very good, thank you. David goes to see Ahimelech the priest in Nob. Ahimelech trembled when he saw him. "Why are you alone?" he asked. "Why is no one with you?" David shows up at the priest, at the tabernacle. Usually when David shows up, people hear him coming before they see him coming because he's coming with an army. Remember, David has a history here of being very successful in battle. This time, he's not with his army. He's alone. Seems a bit out of sorts. Seems a little bit antsy. Ahimelech is asking David, "What's going on? What are you doing here by yourself?" And David looks the priest straight in the eye, and he lies to him. David lies to Ahimelech. Now, David knows God's opinion of lying, right? We've talked quite a bit about how much David loves the law. One of the top 10 law line items is "thou shalt not lie." In fact, that tablet of stone is where? As David is lying to the priest. Where's the tablet of stone? In the ark. It's in the ark. Where's the ark? Like right here. Like the very words that God wrote are right here. "Thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not bear false witness." David looks at Ahimelech and says, "I'm going to tell you what's going on here. And it is not going to be the truth." Here's what David says. "The king has sent me on a private matter." Shh, it's top secret. "He told me not to tell anyone why I am here. I've told my men where to meet me later." David said, "It's all very hush-hush. It's very, very secretive. I shouldn't even be telling you, Ahimelech." By the way, this lie that David tells is not just going to cost David, it is going to cost Ahimelech dearly. It's going to cost Ahimelech his life. It's going to cost him the life of his family as well. David keeps going. "Now, what is there to eat? Give me 5 loaves of bread or anything else you have." David says, "I'm hungry. You got to give me something to eat. Whatever you got, give me something to eat." And Ahimelech has got to be thinking, something's up. What is going on with David? This is so out of character. This is so strange. David, you are the king's son-in-law, right? You're like the most famous guy in the land. You're here by yourself and you're hungry. So the priest tells David, "We don't have any regular bread," the priest replied. "But there is the holy bread, which I guess you can have if your young men have not slept with any women recently." Now, this is weird for us, okay? This is a little bit hard for us to understand. I'm not going to go into great detail, but the only bread that the priest had there was, your version might say, showbread, consecrated bread. It was bread that by Levitical law had to be consecrated, and it was it was only for the consumption of the priests. And even they had to be ceremonially clean before they could eat it. And I know that sounds odd to us, but that's what Ahimelech's saying. All I have here is the holy bread, and you're not supposed to eat it. But since you're David, and according to this story that you just told me, you're on the king's business, Ahimelech goes ahead and gives David the consecrated bread to eat. What happened to the guy who said, "In you, Lord my God, I put my trust. My hope is in you all day long"? What happened to that David? He was angry. He was isolated. He was afraid. You're exactly right. He was hungry. He was hungry. But where is that version of David? Because the story is going to get stranger. And the story is going to get, I think, even more fascinating. David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a spear or sword? The king's business was so urgent that I didn't even have time to grab a weapon." Really? You are the most famous warrior in the land. You're on some secret mission for the king, and you didn't bring a weapon. You didn't bring anything with you, David. Now, don't miss what happens next. This is like the crescendo coming up here. Don't miss the significance of what Ahimelech is about to say and what David is about to see. If this were a movie, the music would be building, okay? No one would be getting up to get popcorn right now. There's something big about to happen. David says, I need a weapon, whatever you have. Spear, sword, I don't care, doesn't really matter. And Ahimelech says this, I only have the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, the priest replied. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. Take that if you want it, for there is nothing else here. That should have been like a slap in the face for David. That should have been like a splash of cold water in David's face. This should be the moment right here when Ahimelech says, all I got is Goliath's sword. You remember the giant that you killed? Remember what God did that day? Remember what God, how God worked through you? That's all I have. That should have been the moment, I think, when David's like, whoa, what am I doing? What am I thinking? How can I even consider telling this lie that I'm telling? How can I even consider going down the path that I'm kind of headed down here? I would think that sword and that remind me, dear Lord, would have immediately transported David back to that day in the Valley of Blood. That day when he fights Goliath. This should have been like the wake-up call for David. David and Goliath. You need a weapon. Here's Goliath's sword that you used 7 years ago to defeat Goliath in the valley, the champion of Philistia. Remember that day, David? You remember what you said? You remember where your hope was that day? Remember who you were trusting that day? Remember what you did? Remember what God did with you? Remember what God did for you? I can't imagine that all those memories didn't come flooding back for David in this moment. Again, what happened to the clear-eyed shepherd boy who said, you come at me with sword and spear, but I come at you against you in the name of the Lord God Almighty? What happened to that guy? What happened to David who said, the whole world is going to know that there's a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. Where's that kid? Jim.
It could very well be that he is rationalizing and justifying that, and still thinking, hey, the Lord is with me.
Okay.
I'm doing this. He's justifying, rationalizing his actions. And hey, he's even given me that sword of Goliath. This surely must be even another sign that God is with me. And it's just a possibility.
You mean we're not the first generation to rationalize? Over here, Matt. Over here to Nicole. Good thought.
Satan has a way of convoluting your thinking when you're afraid and panicked.
Okay.
So I think he was just clouded.
Okay. I think you're exactly right. Well put. Satan has a way of helping us rationalize, especially when we're in a position where we're afraid, lonely. Mark.
Often we get so deep into a lie that, especially if it starts to work, like he was getting the bread, so he's like, all right, this is working. There's so much pride involved that even sometimes you realize, like, you might realize in the moment what I'm doing is wrong, but I'm so far into it, I'd rather just keep going than admit what I'm doing is wrong.
That's good insight. In fact, that's great insight, because if David would have stopped at about any point along this string of lies that he's putting together, and the outcome of the lies and the poorly communicated message, things would have ended up being much different. That's a great point. But David seems to forget, The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You know, where's that? And again, I think Nicole is exactly right. I think his problem is fear, anger, and loneliness. He is on his own. He is trying to figure out what should I do next. He's lonely. He's fearful. He gets this very powerful visual aid to remind him of God's faithfulness, of God's provision, of God's protection, and he seems to completely miss it. He seems to miss it. He simply says about the sword, "There's nothing like it," David replied. "Give it to me." So he's given the sword of Goliath. By the way, I added another famous painting here. I actually don't know if that's famous or not. I never heard of Art de Gelder from 1680. But it's an old painting of Ahimelech giving David the sword. Trying to introduce some culture here on a Wednesday night. But David's response is simply, "I'll take it. It's a great sword. There's no other sword like it. I'll take it." Again, this is going to be a decision that David is going to regret for the rest of his life. He's taken matters into his own hands. He lies. He deceives. He breaks the law. He runs from crazy King Saul with the sword that he used 7 years earlier to kill the giant. And we kind of shake our heads and say, man, what's David thinking? But it's a decision that is really incredibly easy for us to relate to. Because just like David, so often, I'm going to back into preacher mode just a little bit here. When we need God the most, we seem to look to Him the least. When we get, and part of it's exactly what Mark said. We just start getting deeper and deeper into, I started to say our own methods, but I think Nicole again was right, into Satan's lies. We get deeper and deeper into that. And when we need God the most, it seems like we look to Him the least. Jim.
And that all very well may be true in this case, but I think we need to look at another angle that is very relevant, and that is arrogance.
Okay.
I'm the Lord's anointed too. God has chosen me. I'll never forget what Jim Baker said, the guy that started PTL, Jim and Tammy Faye. They committed crimes, or at least I know he did. And he said one time after he had been to prison and got out, he said, I thought the Lord wanted to bless me. And I rationalize what I did because I thought the Lord wanted me to have these things because after all, he was spreading the gospel. So I think we can get caught in a sense of pride and arrogance in our own standing and downplay our sin because, hey, we're Christians and we have a good relationship with God, but sometimes we do act foolishly because of sin.
Yeah, good point. By the way, we're certainly going to see that in David's later life. He gets a little arrogant and entitled, and he's going to start using his position for the kind of some poor reasons. But at this point in his life, he's still. I think it goes back to fear, and I think it goes back to loneliness, anger, and you keep using the word. I think you used it twice. Rationalization. I think you're right on. But again, we do the same thing. When we need God the most, there's the times we kind of double down on trying to figure it out ourselves, even though God has proven to us over and over again how good He is to us, and He's not going to leave us or forsake us. Seems like when we need God the most, we tend to run in the opposite direction. By the way, and I'll say this, I'll take a little bit of a left-hand turn here. That's something that is so easy to see in other people. It is almost impossible to see it in ourselves. It is so easy to see when other people are like that's a bad decision. You're making matters worse. Why are you doing that? You're going to end up with more regret if you do that. It's so easy to see that in other people. It's almost impossible to see that in ourselves because we say, yeah, but my situation's different. Yeah, but this is kind of a unique thing, which is exactly what David is doing here. David is rationalized. No, you don't understand. Okay, this story is far from over, but I want to fast forward just a little bit because I want to keep connecting this thread. We'll come back. David is going to come back around, by the way. David's going to kind of come back to his senses, but something happens when he is there with Ahimelech. Or I should say someone happens. There's somebody else that is there listening in on this conversation that David and Ahimelech have. Look how mean that guy is. Oh, he's mean. That's Doeg. He should be on your Mount Rushmore of evil people in Scripture. He is one evil guy. Now, one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord. He was Doeg the Edomite, Saul's head shepherd. Doeg overhears the conversation that David and Ahimelech have, and he gets it completely wrong. He misunderstands the conversation, but he gets it enough right. He gets enough of it right to really cause a problem for Ahimelech. Doeg, the context is obviously sees a opportunity to get in good with King Saul. I'm going to ingratiate myself with the king. So he goes back to Saul and he says, "Hey, you're searching for David. I know where he is. At least I know where he was." And he tells Saul, David went to Ahimelech for advice. He went to Ahimelech in Nob. And Saul, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but the priest has sided with your enemy. The priest is on David's side. Here's what the text says. Then Doeg the Edomite, who was standing there with Saul's men, spoke up. "When I was at Nob," he said, "I saw David talking to Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech consulted the Lord to find out what David should do. Then he gave David food and the sword of Goliath the Philistine." Doeg tells Saul, basically, the priest, he beseeched God on your enemy's behalf. He gave your enemy food, and he armed your enemy. That's what Ahimelech has done for David, which is sort of right, sort of true. King Saul immediately sent for Ahimelech and all his family who served as priests at Nob. When they arrived, Saul shouted at him, "Listen to me, you son of Ahitub." "What is it, my king?" Ahimelech asked. "Why have you and David conspired against me?" Saul demanded. "Why did you give him food and a sword? Why have you inquired of God for him? Why did you encourage him to revolt against me and to come here and attack me?" Saul is shouting, "You're in on this with David, aren't you? You're all in on this. You're all against me." And Ahimelech is literally like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" "But, sir," Ahimelech replied, "is there anyone among all your servants who is as faithful as David, your son-in-law? Why, he's the captain of your bodyguard and a highly honored member of your household. This was certainly not the first time I'd consulted God for him. I'm a priest, for crying out loud. This was certainly not the first time I consulted God for him. Please don't accuse me and my family in this matter, for I knew nothing of any plot against you." Ahimelech tells the king, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not siding with David. I've done this before for David. Plus, come on, it's David. He's like your most trusted servant. It's like he's fighting all your battles. He's victory after victory." And Saul tells Ahimelech the priest this, "You will surely die, Ahimelech, along with your entire family. The king shouted. And he ordered the bodyguards, kill these priests of the Lord, for they are allies and conspirators with David. They knew he was running away from me, but they didn't tell me. But Saul's men refused to kill the Lord's priests. Saul tells his soldiers, kill these guys. All these priests. They're all in on it together. They're all against me. His soldiers say, we can't kill the Lord's priests. We'll kill your enemies. We'll kill Philistines. We're not going to kill these guys, Saul, which would take some courage to tell Saul that, because Saul is in a kill-em-all mood, obviously. So Saul turns to our friend Doeg. Then the king said to Doeg, you do it. So Doeg turned on them and killed them, 85 priests in all still wearing their priestly tunics. Doeg kills 85 priests who are performing their priestly duties. Then he went to Nob, the city of the priests, and killed the priest families, men and women, children and babies, and all the cattle, donkeys, and sheep. I asked a question, and I said, we're going to keep, I think Ron called it a kill count. We're going to keep a count here, how many Israelites, how many Hebrews David ever kills in his life. And it's a little bit of a convoluted, complicated question, because a whole lot of Hebrews just die here. Mike.
We were pretty harsh on David at the beginning of class for being untruthful here, but could it have been that he was trying to avoid exactly this and give plausible deniability to the priests by lying to him?
You know, it kind of gets back to our conversation on, I don't know, is a short answer. It kind of gets back to our conversation on situational ethics. When's it right to do the wrong thing? Well, there's a lot of times when we can think of times it makes more sense to do the wrong thing, to tell a lie, to be deceitful. I don't know, would God have responded differently? If David had responded differently? If David had been completely truthful and completely trusting in God, would God have found some other way? Very few people. Go ahead, Matt. Yeah.
It seems like Saul should have had his own little deja vu moment. This isn't the first time his men have refused to kill the person he said strike down.
Yeah.
Didn't he tell them to kill his son Jonathan after he tasted the honey?
Yeah, after the honey.
Yeah. So it should have been like, oh wait, let me just think about this a little bit more.
Good. Nicely done. Yeah. So there's this slaughter of priests. Very few people escape it, but one priest does, which happens to be the son of Ahimelech, a priest by the name of Abiathar. Verse 20, but Abiathar, a son of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, escaped and fled to join David. Interesting. The son of this priest escapes the slaughter of his whole family. Where does he run to? He runs to David. I might think, David, it's kind of your fault. You're kind of the one that caused all this. And we can talk about some reasons why you would run to David, and I think there's some legitimate reasons why you would run to David, but he flees to David. He told David that Saul had killed the priest of the Lord. Then David said to Abiathar, that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, I knew he would be sure to tell Saul. And then David says this, I am responsible for the death of your father's whole family. Stay with me. Don't be afraid. The man who is seeking your life is seeking mine also. You will be safe with me. David tells the son of Abiathar, I am responsible for the death of your whole family. Was David responsible for the death of all those priests? I'd argue that he was. Was he guilty of murder? I would argue that he's not. But he's guilty of taking matters into his own hands and paying a dear, dear price for it. as we'll continue to see. An entire village, men, women, children, babies. Here's my other preacher moment. When we make poor decisions, it's not just us that sometimes pays the consequences. There are other people as well that we put at risk because of our actions. David completely missed this. I don't want us to miss it. Now, you think about making decisions and poor decisions, there's almost always collateral damage. You know, we think we're pretty well insulated and we can do this and no one will know and no one will find out, and it's just it's between me and God or Satan or her or him, whatever. Our actions have repercussions. And who's the people that usually get hurt by our poor decisions? It's usually the people that are closest to us, right? It's usually the people that we love. It's usually the people that love us as well. So I got a question here for you before we sort of keep going. What advice would you give someone who was you? And I say that because I brought up the point, when it's somebody else, it's so clear, right? Oh, I can give you great advice. Here's what you should do. When you're trying to decide between right and wrong, here's what you should do. What advice would you give yourself when it comes to, here's my decision-making process? Ron.
Be still and know I'm God, and
Yeah.
and really, look, if I could see this happening in someone else, I would tell them, you need to pump the brakes a little bit here, and you need, just have the faith that that God is with you. It's hard to do when you're panicking.
Yeah, when you're panicking, when you're afraid, when you're lonely. What advice would you give yourself? Gary.
Do you know there are things that happen in our lives, and those are opportunities. In reflection, in my life, is that those are opportunities that God made happen that were growth opportunities.
Okay.
In reflection, and you you're not listening to God, you're allowing Satan to influence your decisions. So if I had a God-centered focus ever since I was a teenager, I would have been a little more wiser much earlier. However, it helps you to be able to coach other generations as they're coming up.
I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your dad was a wise guy.
He was a wise guy. Linda. I had to grow up with it. I heard all that wisdom. Linda.
For me, I was thinking, I even do it now. I always ask myself, would God be pleased with this?
Okay.
And that's something I do now before I make a move.
That's a pretty straight line, isn't it? There's a yes and a no to that. I asked that question because, again, we're so good at rationalizing our situation. And yes, we are all different, but our experiences are not different. We are all unique. Our experiences are not unique. We're all one of a kind. Our experiences are not one of a kind. It is a well-worn path. For 3,000 years, for the past 3,000 years, this exact same thing's been going on. We take things kind of into our own hands and pay a dear price because of it. And I asked that question, what advice would you give someone who is you? And it's interesting that we can get David's advice. Not 22-year-old David. We can get David's advice once he gets much older. When he writes in Psalm 9 as an older man, the Lord is a shelter for the oppressed. The Lord is a shelter. for the oppressed, not some other person, not some affair, not an addiction, not a new car, not a bigger house. The Lord is a shelter for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you. For you, O Lord, have never abandoned anyone who searches for you. I think David would tell his younger self, when you are angry, God's the one you run to. When you are lonely, God is the one you seek out. When you're afraid, God's the one you search for. David knew this. He just kind of forgot it. Several times in his life, he forgot it. So, we got 4 minutes, and I'm going to bring this up before someone else brings it up. Here's the story. You just went through that story of David goes to Ahimelech. I need something to eat. Here's the showbread. I'll take it. All this stuff. What do we do with Matthew chapter 12? Because in Matthew chapter 12, Jesus is going to reference David with Ahimelech. And listen to what Jesus says. At about that time, Jesus was walking through some grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, so they began breaking off heads of wheat and eating the grain. Some Pharisees saw them do it and protested. Your disciples shouldn't be doing that. It's against the law to work by harvesting grain on the Sabbath. But Jesus said to them, haven't you ever read the Scriptures? What King David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God and they ate the special bread reserved for the priests alone. That was breaking the law too. And haven't you ever read in the law of Moses that the priest on duty in the temple may work on the Sabbath? I tell you, there is one here who is even greater than the temple. But you would not have condemned those who aren't guilty if you knew the meaning of this scripture. I want you to be merciful. I don't want your sacrifices. For I, the Son of Man, am master even of the Sabbath. Is Jesus approving of David's lie? Everybody do this. No. Obviously not. Jesus is not approving of David telling a lie a few feet from the Ten Commandments. Is Jesus approving of David's consumption of the holy bread? Maybe. Perhaps. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I'm a little bit more confused by the fact that Jesus references David and his companions.
And what?
His companions.
Yeah.
There were no companions in the story that we're told of.
There's no companions unless David is telling exactly the truth when he says, my men are going to meet me. And that's the only,
Well, and Ahimelech makes a reference to if your men haven't done this.
Yeah, and he talks about if your men haven't slept with women. Yeah, you're exactly right. Jesus says David and his men ate the bread. We don't see that in Samuel. Ron.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's also pointing out to these folks who I'm sure King David is probably like, one of the heroes, and here he is, you're holding on to this idea that, you're perfect. Well, you're not perfect. Yeah. Even, this example here, he did what was wrong.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how to answer it. I got 1 minute, so I can make a statement and then close, and that'll be it. No time for rebuttal. Go ahead, Matt. You answer it.
Well, the purpose of that bread was for the priests to eat, and so it was, God providing something for the Levites who were, working the priestly job to eat. What Jesus is saying here is, it was something good for them and could be used for the good of somebody else. That's why he's healing on the Sabbath. That's why, the priests still work on the Sabbath. It's for the good of a purpose. And guess what? The person above the Sabbath is there. That would be Jesus. And so, even much more so, does he have the authority to do good on the Sabbath?
Yeah, I think you are spot on. I think it kind of it points to our hermeneutics. How are we going to interpret Scripture? Because if we interpret Scripture just in a legalistic way, we're always going to have a misrepresentation of God. Because God's not legalistic. God, I have no doubt God did not approve of David's lie. but God sees a bigger picture here. I don't want David to not be able to fulfill his mission, which is survive and live. So Jesus certainly does not condemn David for eating the showbread, and I think Matt put it really well. Jim.
He does acknowledge that he was breaking the law. I don't know the exact answer, but I do believe in this context, Jesus is trying to make the point that one is greater here among you.
Yeah.
I am Lord of the Sabbath.
Yeah.
It's like the Sabbath was I forgot. The Sabbath wasn't created for, it was given to them. Yeah, I'm kind of losing my thought. It's not gelling together, but I think it's
Sabbath
related.
For man, not man for the Sabbath.
Yeah, it's related to the same idea. And here you have one who is greater than David. I am the fulfillment. I am the Lord.
Yeah.
I am among you, and you're trying to blame me, or you're trying to accuse me.
Casma has the last word.
I don't know if you can look at this part of it. The showbread was actually what was taken up after it was not used. Isn't that correct?
I'm not sure about the showbread.
Well,
I'd have to go back and
the bread that he was given.
It was prepared for the priest. For
it
sure.
was prepared for the priest, but it's what was taken up the day after when new bread was put out. That what he was given was the old bread. So I don't know if there was.
I'd have to go back and do a little Levitical study on.
I don't know if it was a question of legalism, but yes, definitely that the point was that Christ is more.
Yeah, and I think that's Jesus' point: is don't get hung up on the legalism here. I am the Lord of the Sabbath. Get hung up on me. Hey, thanks for your input. I really wanted to get through kind of this part of the story. I feel like we're slowing down a little bit. And I wanted to regain a little bit of traction. So we'll pick the story up here next week. Things are going to start happening pretty quickly for David. It looked like it to us. I'm sure for him, it's like this. It's taken forever. But things start happening for David, and it's pretty cool to watch it happen. So let's have a prayer, and we'll be dismissed. Father, again, we are very thankful that you have blessed us in so many ways, the ways that we can see and point to, and the ways that I guess we'll never know until heaven. But we do know that the good and the perfect gifts are all from you, and thank you for burying us in good and perfect gifts. Thank you for these very true stories of very real lives of people who had to make the same decisions we do. Am I going to trust you, or am I going to try to figure it out on myself? And Father, I pray that we can gain some wisdom and some insight from David and from Saul and from all of these lives and stories, and especially some insight about you and your sovereignty and your faithfulness. So bless us as we leave this place. I pray that you would continue to be with us as we continue this week. A lot of things going on with the family here, and I pray that you would be extremely involved in all of it. I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.